welcome back to Occasional Randomness. I'm your host, Eric Scott, and joining me, as always, is my fellow co-host, somebody who knows his way around a TIE fighter, Jason Johnson.
So, Eric, I know we planned this out. We had lots of planning sessions. We've been talking about it for weeks and whatever, but I don't think this is the model I trained
What does this button do?
on.
More on, yeah,
Oops.
more on that in a minute.
No. Without the oops.
Yeah,
Oh, wait, wrong movie.
yeah. Let me sum up. Yeah, so now that the Marvel stuff is done, as you might have assumed from what we just mentioned, we're off to Star Wars land. And this time we're starting to watch the Fire Hose release schedule, that is Andor Season 2. And this particular podcast will be talking about the first 3 episodes, which of course be 1 through 3. And apologies to you Farscapers out there. We will, I promise, get back to Farscape once the said fire hose has stopped.
Speaking of Fire Hose, did you realize they also just dropped Tales of the
Underworld? Yeah.
Underworld? Yeah. So I watched the first couple of those too. So, more core content.
Yeah, I haven't even wanted to get to that yet because I don't know how many episodes it is. I'm just gonna, I got Andor. That's it. It's too much.
Well, agreed. But if you get burned out with Andor, you need a break. They're short, so yeah.
Yeah, probably less political intrigue and having to think too much because, yeah, we'll get into it. But yeah. So,
Yeah. It's the opposite of the spectrum. It's good, but it is still very much in the theme of the Tales of, where it's just kind of nice little vignettes, and then you're done, you're going to the next thing.
mhm.
So
Which reminds me, I have to finish the last season of What If. Anyway,
I never started that one. Hey, we got another season to do.
yeah. Oh no.
But Farscape, yeah, it'll be back one day. We promise.
Yeah. Haven't forgotten about it.
This this is occasional randomness. We have to be random sometimes.
Yeah. Random but topical, or topical but random, whichever, or neither. And as always, our little PSA here. If you like what we do, please give us a like or a review wherever you listen to this at, or on social media. Spread the word. Like our tweets and posts and whatever, and all the good stuff. We'd appreciate it.
Or X's or whatever they are.
Yeah. What are they called now? Just I have no idea. Whatever.
No.
That's how much I care. I just use the thing. I don't care what you call it. Just-
Yeah.
all right. So I guess we'll do the little alternating recappy thing here, and then we'll get into the discussion parts. As we said, Andor season 2, episode 1. 1 year later, or more like 3 years later for the audience. Am I right? All right. So 1 year after the Ferrex uprising, Cassian impersonates an Imperial test pilot in order to steal a prototype of a new Imperial ship, the TIE Avenger. When he attempts,
Not the New Avengers or the Secret Avengers
yeah,
or
or
the
the Star, not Avengers, wink, wink, yeah, which also I have to go see. Anyway,
yep.
when he attempts delivery on a jungle planet, he is ambushed by a rogue band of squabbling guerrillas, the Maya Pai Brigade. Pay Brigade, whichever. Anyway, who cares? We'll get in those morons later.
Consutai.
Yeah. Meanwhile, on the agricultural planet Mina Rao, Bix, Brasso, Wilmon, and our little buddy B2EMO fear detection by the Empire while in the undocumented employ of a local farmer. Bix is suffering from PTSD caused by Gorse's torture last season. Keeping up with our characters from last time on Chandrila, Mon Mothma prepares for her daughter's arranged marriage, but is informed by Tay Kolma that his financial investments have turned sour as a result of their dealings and implies he is considering selling her out to the Empire. Felisartha asks Luthen for information regarding the whereabouts of her partner and fellow rebel Cinta Kaz, also from last season, but he claims to have no knowledge of her. Throwback to Rogue One, Orson Krennic oversees a secret meeting of Imperial officers about forcibly mining the resources of the planet Gorman due to its heavy concentration of a rare mineral that they need, an initiative to which Dedra Miro is reluctantly assigned. The conflict between the Maya Pai insurgents reaches a boiling point, and several members of them are shot and killed as Cassian is taken hostage.
Jumping us straight into episode 2. On the jungle planet, Cassian is held prisoner while the conflict amongst the Maya Pai Brigade worsens and the group splits into two factions at a stalemate. On Mineral, Imperial officers arrive to audit all the workers' papers as Bix, Brasso, and Will arrange to move to a different part of the planet to avoid discovery. On Coruscant, Dedra and Syril, who are now living together as a couple, prepare for a social event that they have been putting off. As the preparations for Lita's wedding conclude, Mon Mothma discusses the possibility of Tay Kolma's defection with Luthen, who says they should attempt to ascertain Kolma's price for keeping silent about the rebellion. Cassian slips away from his captors when they've become distracted with a terrible challenge. Yeah, we'll get to that. And flees the planet, revealed to be Yavin 4, as in the Stolen Tie Avenger.
And that leads into the final episode of this particular week, Episode 3, Harvest. Cassian makes contact with Luthen's assistant, or whoever she is, Clea Markey, and is able to ascertain the danger his friends are in on Mina Rao. Meanwhile, Dedra and Syril host Syril's mother, Edie, for dinner, during which Edie repeatedly belittles Syril, as we saw last season, prompting Dedra to forcibly establish limitations on his mother. On Chandrila, Lita is married to Stikon Skulden as arranged, and the ceremony is followed by a reception / rave, which we do also in a minute. As the Ferrex expats prepare to leave Mina Rao, Imperial officer Lieutenant Kroll attempts to rape Bix, but she kills him after a bloody altercation. As the conflict spirals further, Brasso is killed by a stormtrooper, but Cassian arrives in the TIE Avenger and kills all the remaining Imperial troops. Cassian, Bix, and Will flee on the TIE Avenger. Having been unable to come up with a price to ensure Tay Kolma's silence, Luthen informs Mon Mothma that he has decided to have him killed. And of course, Mon Mothma then binge drinks and dances the night away while Vel watches Kolma get taken away by Cinta, who I guess we'll never see again. We'll see. So that's the first 3 episode dump, as we said before, of Andor Season 2, which is 3 a week for 4 weeks. So, hey. So, yeah, as I said before, it's been 3 years for us. So I'm kind of glad that they released that little 15-minute episode, or whatever I call it, prequel, not prequel, but like a teaser or whatever, reminder that gave us an overview of what happened in Season 1, as I kind of remembered the general flow and some of the plot. Mostly faces like, oh, that's that person. I don't know what the name is. Yeah, but so it's good to get a quick review before they dove right into this thing. So, so far of the season, what do you think so far?
So my first question is, has it really been 3 years?
Yeah, 2022 was when Season 1 came out.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm really losing track of time here. Uh,
Yeah,
I
I had
knew it.
no idea until until it said, oh, 3 years. I'm like, wait a minute, what?
um, okay, we'll move on. So, yeah, I think my first impressions is that this is definitely more of the Andor show that I loved from the last, I guess, several-year-old now season. Overall impressions, I'm lost. I have to try and remember who everyone is. And because the time jump, we have all these changes that we missed to figure out. So, just like last season, I'm loving it. Yeah, this is one of those Star Wars shows. One of the things I like that they do with the Star Wars shows, they started doing it with some of the Marvel stuff, and I feel like Marvel's kind of fallen into in a groove. As much as we love Daredevil and all that kind of stuff, of kind of the shows all being now back to Avengers level action movies. And one of the things I liked about the early stages was that kind of they were playing with the genres, right? Uh, this movie's going to be more of a uh, like Winter Soldier was more of a spy thriller, right? The original Captain America was more of a war movie. Yeah, they played with tropes a little bit. I feel like they've gotten away from that.
Hmm.
Star Wars is doing a great job with that. Your Mandalorians are your westerns, and your I don't know what Boba Fett was supposed to be. The Vespas in France or something. I don't know, Italy. But this is definitely your spy movie for Star Wars, but it's such a slow burn. Whereas everything else is all in your face, and it's I like the action stuff. Don't get me wrong, but you kind of know what you expect. You can follow the story relatively easily. Skeleton Crew. It's Goonies in space, right? We can follow that. This show is so confusing to me. I'm like, we were constantly looking at each other in the episode and going, "Huh? Who is that? Wait, who?" Yeah. So it's just just a different show, and I thoroughly enjoy it from that aspect as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Like I said, it's like, oh yeah, I know that face. What's her name? I have no idea. But yeah, overall, yeah, I'm liking it. It seems like it's following a trend. Of course, 3 episodes so far, but a trend I saw in Season 1, that in terms of it slowly getting started. There's some action stuff in the beginning a little bit, but it's kind of really almost 2.5 episodes back in season one to really start all the intrigue and action. I mean, I was kind of bored with it, and then suddenly at halfway through this third episode, it kicked in when everything goes to hell, and he meets Luthen, he has to get off the planet he's on, and that some of how the season two has started. But I get it. It's been 3 years. You have to get caught up with like what uh, 10 characters you saw 3 years ago and don't half remember because you probably haven't watched it since then. So that can take time to set everything up, right? Which is good that they have 12 episodes for this season versus like 8, like most shows nowadays. So they've got time to take their time to kind of move things along in a more controlled way, a less frantic way that other shows just kind of jump around because they got 8 episodes. They can't waste any time on backstory to some degree or whatever. They just got to keep going, right? They got to plow forward no matter what, and they're gonna take you with them. And there's kind of a little more comedy than I was expecting. Like we talked about like the funny bits with him trying to figure out how to steal a TIE Avenger. Oh, this wasn't what I was trained on. Okay, we're gonna go forward, and of course he goes backwards. It's just, fun stuff like, what's this button do? Cannons fire off. Like, which, okay, sure, funny. And then we kind of had the whole pointless rebels or guerrillas on Yavin 4, which we'll get into. But yeah, otherwise, the rest of it was pretty much what I was hoping for and liked from the first season. Like all the intrigue and politicalness, and if that's a word, and how the rebellion's forming and trying to hide from the Empire and all that kind of stuff. So I loved, off to a good start, I think.
Agreed. I think on the everything you just said, it definitely was a slow burn out of the gate. It'll be interesting to see if they keep that pace, if we get a large acceleration in the next batch of episodes. I I will say, and I'm trying to remember back because you're right. I've watched bits and pieces of it, but I haven't gone back and watched the whole thing end to end. I probably should have before we jumped into this. But I was trying to remember. I feel like last season they did kind of a similar thing where it was like every 3 episodes was like a chapter, and they broke up the story into kind of sections. And that makes sense in my head on how they're dropping these in 3 episode blocks. It's almost like each one's a chapter of a story, and I'm wondering if we're not going to see, obviously, even though they're out for our listeners, we've focused on just the first three, so I haven't started the next ones yet. And I'm wondering if it's going to be that way where you have a block of 3 episodes, you kind of get in a groove, you know the storyline, and then boom, we're on to another like chapter where you almost have to start over, reorienting yourself. Now, obviously, there'll be some continuity because we've got all the stuff we're fixing to talk about with Dedra and the stuff she's pulled into, and you know what's going to happen with Mon Mothma and all that. So there's definitely some through lines of continuity, but it'll be interesting to see how they jump, kind of like they did from the different jobs last season, where he went from on his planet to on what was it the prison to the job, right, to the prison to back to the planet. So it'll be just kind of interesting if they follow that same three stories to a chapter, 4 chapter arc, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think I saw in like the little release blurb that I sent you the one time that yeah, I think they're calling them like chapters. So yeah, it does make sense that like each of these three are going to be like a chapter of a book, right? As it progresses along down the thing, right? So and I guess
Unless
like most books, it starts out slow and then it picks up. So that's what we had right now. We just the start of the book.
I guess I subliminally remembered that, so I won't take credit for coming up with chapters then.
Yeah, just underscores that their marketing worked. Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah.
So yeah, so we start out with Cassian, being an undercover test pilot, which I thought was kind of funny. He's chatting with the one Imperial person who's helping him, is scared that he's gonna get caught. He's like, "That's okay, don't worry about it. Everything's fine." They have a little comedy stuff that we aforementioned, trying to get off the thing. But so I thought, okay, he's now an experienced rebel, right? After last season, he's done the crime and the time, right? So I mean, he knows what he's doing. Just jump in there, steal a ship, be all nonchalant. Just like, yep, I'm a test pilot. This is what I do. Made the Imperial defector feel happy and comfortable and okay with what she's doing. Don't worry about it. It's okay. We got it. No problem. And then he gets into the ship and has no clue what he's doing. So, yeah, crashes around the bay. Opens the door, starts shooting weapons off nowhere. They figure it out, start closing the door. Of course, he's now he's stuck. But then you find the button for the whatever torpedoes or whatever and blow a hole through the door. And the trooper in front of the door. It was kind of funny. So I mean, it was funny. I tried not to think too much about why he didn't have a better idea what he was doing and just kind of went with it. Like, typical Star Wars, all good plans don't survive, the initial contact with anything.
Yeah, I mean, as we hit on a couple times, I think they did circle back to that, and tried to make gloss it with like a line about it being a different model than what he trained on, right? So he probably trained for a regular tie or something else, and it because that's all they knew about, right? This is supposed to be some secret new model, probably a prototype for the new interceptor when that comes out, because I think Vader's was the first interceptor, right? So yeah, again, it makes for great comedy. Part of me was wondering, this is this is going to be kind of the bridge between what we've had so far and Rogue One, right? And Rogue One had a decent amount of comedy in it. It was a serious, Star Wars movie, but it still had a little bit of that Star Wars comedy tone that I think was missing a little bit from the first season, right? It was pretty dark. So maybe it was too dark for some audiences, and they're using this to kind of bridge the tone and get us closer to the Rogue One tone.
Yeah, because obviously I haven't watched this in 3 years, like you, or whatever. But yeah, yeah, I don't remember too much comedy. Granted, if it was funny, I laughed, and that's great. I don't have to remember it. But yeah, it was definitely a more serious tone with the building the rebellion, the espionage, subterfuge. Not a lot of like slapstick, comedy that not that Star Wars is slapstick, but it's got its own little brand of subtle comedy or overt comedy in some cases. So. But yeah, I can see him trying to not try to lighten some of it up, to get you. It's not all doom and gloom here. It's the rebellion's a good thing, and here it comes, and we can have fun along the way when we get there. But we'll see. It's only 3 episodes. We got 9 to go, so we'll see what we'll see what happens.
Right.
And I guess sticking with the Cassian plot here, since we got lots of plots running around here, he gets to his rendezvous point, which later we learn Yavin 4 as he's leaving at the second episode or third episode, and we see like those ziggurats or whatever they are. Oh, hey, look, I remember what those are. So cool. Throw in some ties to what we've seen before and what we know. But then he gets caught by the most stupid, incompetent leftovers of a rebel brigade I've ever seen. I was just confused by this whole section of the episodes. Which, before I get into any of that, what you think about these guys? Just comedy relief, plot device? I don't know.
Yeah. So I enjoyed the group. I was kind of laughing at it. The comedy worked on me. I will start out there, right? So I didn't dislike it, but I'll also say that I felt it was kind of predictable. There there wasn't a lot to this section that really I didn't feel that I didn't see coming. Right? We'll get into a lot of the stuff I didn't see coming, in some of the other plots. But on this one, it was like, yeah, okay, I get what they're doing. We all know how it's going to end, right? Eventually, he's going to escape and all that kind of stuff. But I think my only gripe with it will be if this is all we see of them. If there's some plot, some relevance to the plot later, I'm good with it. But if not, it's gonna. I'll probably end up liking this section a lot less if you were to ask me again. If we see these guys have this whole like couple episodes of dealing with them, and then that's it.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to keep the comedy part going, it would, I guess, be hilarious if later he becomes in charge of them or something, or has to use them to do some other mission. So then, okay, here's these morons again. They're like, "Oh, hi, remember us? Sorry about that." But yeah, I guess more importantly, it was a way to sideline him for a bit so he couldn't get back to his friends. So therefore, they get their own drama, which we'll go into here in a minute. But yeah, I mean, yeah, some of it was kind of funny. Some of it was just kind of like, what are you doing? And I don't know much about this brigade, but not like they're all on the same team here. It's like something happens and they start shooting each other, and then like around, Cassian, we have to kill him, but then he can't teach us how to fly the plane or the ship. But then we have our person can figure it out eventually. Oh no, you just shot her. So I'm like,
Well, and they have to end up with him being on the group that's not on the plane and a group that has the plane. Because if he'd end up with the group that was on the plane, they could have just took off.
yeah, he could maybe
So
convince them that, hey, I can fly it, so y'all can just fit in here and we'll just go, and leave those guys here, chumps, and whatever. Yeah. So
so of course they came up with an elegant solution to solve this problem, right?
yeah, our first ever on-screen game of space rock paper scissors, which I mean, I was like, are you kidding? I'm like, no, of course, this totally fits with these idiots. It's like that's what they would do, right? So he's like, we have a way to solve our problems here. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. I'm like, what are you doing?
Well, and they amp it all up, right? Because you've got, who's your second? Who's your second?
I know you
And
think it's like some kind of like duel or something or whatever, and then nope, here comes as soon as they put like one hand out flat and one, I'm like, oh no, they're not gonna. Yes, they are. Okay. Mm. And Cassian manages to, I guess, somehow figure out that there's a blaster in that drawer. Maybe he saw it before. I don't know. Whatever. The one guy is too engrossed with watching child games out there, and he gets the drop on him. He's he's making his way towards the ship, the tie, and of course, being Star Wars, a medium-sized creature jumps out and attacks the, what do you want to call them, guerrillas, rebels, whatever. And then in the confusion, he gets away and leaves them on this planet to, I don't know, get munched on by the whatever it was. So maybe we'll see him again. If so, hopefully it's hilarious that they have to be like, ooh, sorry about that whole thing on the planet back there. But otherwise, see ya. Goodbye.
I think the monster was my least favorite part of this whole section too. Not because monsters like this are unusual, like you say. We've got plenty of cases of these kind of creatures. I think the prequels relied pretty heavily on them in different scenes. So, yeah, it's not that I dislike the creatures, and I think the animation actually was pretty decent. It's too much coincidence, right? It wasn't Cassian's skill. I mean, a little bit. He shot, he knew where the gun was. He managed to get back to the ship, all that kind of stuff. But it was more so that the distraction and the whatever of the uh, group getting attacked in the middle of their rock paper scissors game with by these monsters. And I think I heard an author mention one time, it's like, coincidence is okay for getting your characters into trouble, but it shouldn't be used to get them out. And I feel like, we're relying a lot on coincidence to get characters out of trouble instead of actually having skill and plot do it.
Yeah, because he was sneaking away. He was like two-thirds of the way to the TIE fighter. Like they didn't have to do that. He could have just snuck over there, and maybe like at the last minute he trips or he hits something, and they all look over, and go, oh, there he is, and he jumps on the ship and runs away. So
Right.
they didn't need the extra drama of giant predator eating some of the rebels. Well,
But it was Chekhov's monster because they'd mentioned him earlier. We had the indicators that there was something big in the woods or whatever, so they had to pay it off.
yeah, because it
And
got the
so,
one person, I guess, because they found like her boot with like half her leg in it or something or whatever. So it's
right.
like, okay, there's something out there, and you heard it too a couple of times. So yeah, I guess okay, now it's time to show you what the noise is. But okay, whatever.
Yeah, but like you said, it didn't matter. You could have done it with other methods. It wouldn't have been quite so. I can't say it wouldn't be so silly because we're in the middle of a rock paper scissors game.
Yeah, or if
So
he was escaping, and they're playing the rock scissors papers game, and then he gets caught, and then the monster eats them, and then he runs away, or something like that. But it just, oh well. Anyway, enough gripping.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I'm going to throw out one little. I'm not going to call it a conspiracy theory because I read this somewhere. I can't remember where. I didn't have a chance to look it up. So complete grain of salt with this. But I thought I read somewhere or saw mention that this group, which I'm not going to slaughter the name of because I don't have it in front of me right now, was the remnants of the group that Saw Gerrera took out in the last season. Because there was a little bit in the first season about um, what's his name not saving a group and giving them to the Empire as a distraction. And anyway, he saved Saw Gerrera's group or something like that, but let them got taken out. And I saw somewhere, whether it's factual or not, that this was the same group. This was the remnants of the group that got kind of thrown under the bus in the first season.
Hmm.
So I thought if so, that would be a neat little bit of continuity. So yeah, little conspiracy theory there for you.
Yeah, and spoiler alert for if you haven't seen ahead, in the clips we've seen Saw Gerrera, so maybe they'll mention or they'll come in full circle. Who knows? But we'll see. All right, let's see. So on to other plots. I guess until they start to merge, which they will by end of episode 3 here. Let's just kind of talk about each other major ones kind of as a whole. That way it's easier than jumping around like 8 times in an episode. So, so let's talk about our Imperial Security Bureau friends and related cast here. So we see that Dedra is now part of some new secret project, which the Empire loves, to get some rare mineral that they need, probably for the Death Star, because that's why Krennic is there, from this planet called Gorman. but it's not a mining planet that has this mineral. It's just, it's just part of the natural ecosystem. But this is more of like a textile planet, I guess, because it's that spider that makes the silk that everybody loves, the Gorman, clothing or whatever. But it sounds like this is going to be a really ugly and messy way to mine things, like strip mining or even planetary, who knows what, right, to get at this stuff. That I think they mentioned they could collapse the planet or something. So, it sounds really bad, right? So I'm sure that won't do anything to increase the sympathy for any rebellion or anti-imperial movements, right? It'd just be like, oh, well, where's our Gorman silk? We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention, furthering the like you say, the um, reputation of the Empire as they continue to destroy planets, kind of echoes of Alderaan to come. Assume that's the direction the story goes. I do love the fact that they've brought in more Rogue One characters by bringing in Krennic in, so that we can further tie us into that storyline, because we're getting closer and closer to that being where Cassian ends up, right? And so we're telling the story of here to there and bringing those characters in. Now I don't want it to be like too much overlap where he should know who he is and they should meet, but it's neat to see the pieces of the world circling itself.
Yeah, I mean, I always love how they they could go back and fill gaps in from like movie to movie or series to series. It's like, there's plenty of pieces to mine, so to speak, of the Star Wars world, and it's fun to see how they fit things in and relate things to each other. And then yeah, I guess in her free time, apparently Dedra and Syril are now a thing, which, like you said, you didn't see that coming. Maybe I kind of did in season one because he kept showing up where she was, and he's trying to act like he knows everything and trying to help her or whatever, and she's like, "Go away." But
Yeah, which I think that was why it surprised me a little bit. Is I could see it from him, but she was such a stoic character that it's kind of an interesting coupling. So I'm not opposed to it. I just thought it was I didn't see it coming until they put it on the screen. I'm like, oh, they actually went there.
yeah, I guess wherever she sees in him, or maybe she sees that he can become part of the ISB. I don't know, or help her out with stuff. Who knows? But or she he kind
He's definitely
he kind
obsessive.
of did help her
So
last time, sort roundabout way. And yeah, I guess they're talking about like I guess hosting some kind of dinner party. Or I wasn't sure it was gonna be like a dinner party for one of her bosses, maybe like that director guy, not Krennic, but her whatever the other boss's name, of course. I have no idea. But no, it's to introduce her to Cyril's mother that we saw last season, and that reminded me pretty quick of last season. I can see why he wants to get as far away from her as he possibly can for as long as he can, because she nags him all the time. She's like one of those like you're not doing what I think you should be doing kind of mothers. And he's got to constantly prove he's good enough for her love or affection or approval or whatever. So good example of toxic parenting in the Star Wars universe.
yeah. So if I said I didn't see the other one coming, I will claim to have seen this one. In fact, I could tell by Cyril's reluctance that it was going to be his mom. That was just the only person that I could picture. And so as soon as she walked in, I was like, "Yep, called that one." I did want to mention, because I didn't call it out when we were talking about the spider silk plotline, for lack of a better way to call it. Her boss, whose name you just couldn't come up with, and I don't have either. I swear he's like a stand-in for Tarkin, Grand Moff Tarkin, because that's who that character reminds me of so much, just in the way they have his bearing and the way he kind of interacts with everybody around him. So it's kind of interesting that you've got a Grand Moff Tarkin to her Vader. So
Hmm,
anyway,
yeah, yeah, and that dinner was really awkward and painful, which is how they set it up to be. And yeah, especially for Cyril, who eventually just has to get up and like leave and go like flop on the bed, which I thought was kind of funny.
I saw somewhere that you mentioned it, so I'm gonna jump in there. That bed scene was not even scripted. Like that was just something the actor did or something, and
No,
it made it to the shot. So
that's
I thought that was awesome.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah. He's like, mother, and just walking. And of course, I love how Deidre's, all smiles or kind of smiling and doing the little chit chat. And I love how, like, on a dime, she turned and you can just see her, like, look at mom there as, like, you know, no, I looked you up. And, the uncle they talk about, we know all about him and his bad dealings and whatever. And here's what's going to happen. You will see him when I tell you you can see him. All this stuff. I'm like, dang, you know, she put the fear of the Empire into that woman for sure. And then they're whispering later as he's on the bed, you hear them talking. So I don't know what else she said, but it sure made mom kind of sit up straight and stop nagging her son. So I guess there are good benefits of the Empire, maybe, at least here anyway.
Well, and it's a good reminder of just how capable and kind of scary Dedra is, right? Because we're jumping back in, like you said, we're kind of getting to know these characters again, and over the course of the last season, she was just competent and on top of it, and uh, a worthy adversary for Cassian. If it's always good to have like a good foil for your character. You want somebody who is competent chasing them, right? You don't want to have all chases don't need to be Boss Hog, right? And Roscoe P. Coltrane. You sometimes you want a villain that's actually a legitimate like threat. And you know, now that we're starting up a new season, it's neat to see them use this as a show of like it's a good to kind of get to know the characters, but it also kind of shows or as a reminder of how capable she is to just no, here's my world, here's how things actually function. We'll tolerate you, but this is how it is. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, she's still there.
Yeah, and just more of what the Empire really is, right? So it's not all just, make the trains run on time. It's all the stuff that goes with that. So all about power and how you use it and who you use it on, right?
Right.
And then we get I guess we'll save the all the fireworks for last. We get the next thing, which is all the political stuff. So we get the political and marriage intrigue also, which we'll talk about. That's happening on Chandrila, Mon Mothma's home, with her family, and all the related cast around that other, not separate but distant, I guess, distant plot line that's happening. But the marriage stuff was pretty cool because I always like. I mean, they went into some nice detail and spent lots of time on the marriage, like ceremonies and preparations and history, which is always fun to see that kind of thing in science fiction shows, like to build out the culture of other civilizations. Because usually you don't know much about them other than they all like it's an agricultural planet. Like the whole planet just does agriculture. Really? You know the whole planet does textiles, like the Scorpion place, or
Well,
the
but
whole planet's a city. So it's nice to actually build out like what that means or how they actually work or how they got like that.
that's exactly what I was going to say. When you come from a universe where entire planets have a single ecosystem, then it makes sense for entire worlds to have one textile.
Yeah. It's like, but if you don't like silk, but anyway, yeah, right,
It gets everywhere.
yeah,
Oh, wait.
yeah, that's sand. It's a different four-letter word, starts with S, whole different thing. So, and then yeah, her daughter Lita doesn't like her future husband. Like she was like, he doesn't talk to me. He's sulking or he's whatever. And Mon does try to talk her out of it. You know, when right when they're getting ready to walk out to the ceremony, like well, my mom was drunk when I was where you are, and here's what I wish you would have told me is like you can actually walk away, like just don't show up. And she's like no. So I guess for whatever reason she decided to go through with it, and yeah, we get some fun wedding scenes with them doing the little wedding, ceremonial movements and dancing and cutting of the cords and that kind of stuff. So I thought it was pretty cool. I liked it.
So there's a couple interesting points there to me. One is that, like you said, even though she's got her reasons for not doing it, and her mom encourages her last minute to not do it, Lita does go through with it, and it's my take at least is it's tradition, right? She may not be comfortable with her future husband, she may not be ready for whatever, but this Chandrilian society and the way that she was at least raised by her parents and stuff like that, you know, the tradition says this is how you do it, and so she's going to go through with it. Um, on the flip side of that, I appreciate that this kind of gave Mon Mothma a bit of redemption because one of my frustrations here was, the use of her daughter as a trade in favors, right? She needed to arrange the banking deal for the rebellion, and so uh, what does she do? She basically betroths her daughter because she knew that's what's going to happen to the banking guy, and it's like, eh, all right, it's always, and I know this show's kind of about those gray edges, but here's a character that we take as a hero of the rebellion, and something sketchy like that with your family is just kind of hard to see. So it's kind of nice to see that she did have her regrets and try to fix it later. And then just kind of stepping back from that, I completely agree about the detail of the wedding. Right? It's a the Chandrilian society it's another one of those kind of planets they talk about in Star Wars, but we haven't seen a lot of, or maybe some fiction that I'm not aware of in the books side. But it's kind of cool to have it in visual media shown to us, especially in this elaborate wedding setting.
Yep. And then intermixed with all the wedding planning and rave, which we'll get to maybe here in a second, and all the other fun stuff, we get the stuff that if you're not paying attention to, you'll get lost real quick if you can't remember it last season. So, we get Mon Mothma and Luthen are dealing with the banking deals and funding that she set up last season, like you mentioned, like discreetly or illegally or whatever you want to say, that they did with this Tay Kolma banker guy, and then indirectly also with, like you said, this, father of the son that, got betrothed to her daughter. It's Davo Skuldrin guy, who's all of them together are helping to fund the rebellion, or at least fund some of the money, you know, to the rebellion, or probably a good chunk of it, who knows. And that was kind of a lot to keep track of for the audience, or at least for me, because again, I watched the 15-minute recap. They hit on it a little bit, but then coming back into this thing, I'm like, okay, wait, who's this guy? Okay, he's the one that he's her lifelong friend. Okay, and he wasn't too sure about it, but he did it. And then they work with this other guy to get the other money. Okay, now I'm caught up again. But it took me a minute of like, who's what, what's going on? And now apparently, her lifelong buddy here, Tay, has fallen some hard times. He's had some bad deals. I guess he's lost, some money, and I guess he kind of feels undervalued. He said, I guess with Mon and this whole thing going on, which I guess is kind of code for, hey, why don't you help me out with some more money here, or I'll tell the Empire on you. So, not quite sure how he thought that was going to go, but it didn't exactly end like how he wanted it, as now it seems like Luthen's apparently decided to have him killed by Sintra, who pops up at the last second as the chauffeur, and I'm sure we might ever never see this guy again. I don't know.
Yeah, I would assume safe to assume we're not going to see him again. Brief recap on that, at least if I'm remembering this right, so set me straight if I'm not, is that Mon Mothma was funneling money probably from her senatorial access, or maybe even the personal money, to the rebellion. And when they were worried that was going to get discovered by audits, she talked about it with Tay Coma, because like you said, they were lifelong friends, and he's the one that kind of facilitated the meeting with Skuldrin, who's the banker, and he's basically money laundering for her. So that it doesn't look like she's directly funding the rebellion, but it's being basically laundered through his connections in his bank. So Take Home is kind of like the matchmaker here. And now, a year later, like you say, bad investments, his stuff, some deals haven't worked out. I'm pretty sure they throw in there that his wife left him.
Hmm.
So, he's now gone from being in a prime place to being in a bad place. And that just kind of sets him up for, yeah, trying to blackmail them out of some money and ending up having himself handled by Senta, probably off screen between episodes. Uh, my only interesting comment here is I personally thought this was going to get drawn out, right? I guess I should have looked at the 3-episode block and realized they were going to move on to another set of stories. But yeah, I just was expecting this to be part of like the arc for the show this season. And I think you're right. I think we're done. Like, I think he's out, and we're going to roll on to the after effects of how that affects Mon Mothma,
Hmm.
which I'll circle back to here in a minute. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this echoes out, is what I'll say for here.
Yeah, because they kept trying to figure out, okay, how much money is it going to take to buy him off, to buy him back, basically to shut him up. And then he was going to have this big meeting with her or somebody, maybe with her and somebody else, like next week on Coruscant. So it's like, okay, is that going to be one of those actual meetings, or it's going to be like one of those, like, hey, here's my Imperial friend. So, and yeah, at that point, Luthen's like, yeah, okay, this isn't going to work. So, I got my little assassin friend here. We'll just take care of you. Which is also confusing because, yeah, I remember him outright saying he was going to take care of him, so to speak, quote unquote, take care of him. So I couldn't tell how Mothma was reacting. Like, did she know he was going to be killed, or she was just, well, I'm screwed. I'm just going to get hammered and go dance crazy at this rave, and then we'll deal with it tomorrow. But
If they did, I didn't pick that up. So I thought it was just her reaction to her daughter not, you know, still going through with the wedding. You know, I didn't take it as being her knowledge of the murder.
yeah, that and probably nerves of what's going to happen if this guy doesn't, play ball here. So
Yeah,
she's just going, okay,
I,
I'm just going to go get drunk and enjoy what's left of my time here, and.
exactly. Yeah, that was my take. I didn't see the other priests coming until obviously we see Senta as the chauffeur.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how she reacts when she finds out that he's dead. Like, will she find out, like, oh, the speeder had an accident on the way to the, spaceport, or next week on Coruscant he doesn't show up, right? Or who knows, right? But yeah, I mean, obviously, Luthen's made the calculation that, no, let's just off this guy, let's get him out of the way, and protect, him, her, and the rebellion, right? Hopefully, and probably not that Tay didn't leave anything incriminating lying around that is going to come out, if they examine his estate or whatever. And at least this Davo guy seems comfortable with the status quo because his son's married off. He's maybe got some leverage now or later if he wants to push his luck later. And like maybe we'll see what happens then. Or he's just happy where he is now to be able to have a partnership with a powerful senator. We'll see what happens. I'm sure there'll be more with the surviving little cabal here, right? As we got another 9 episodes to go. And yeah, like I said, Mon goes off and gets blitzed and starts dancing really crazily at this rave wedding dance disco ball music DJ thing that's floating around, which was again kind of funny. So
Yeah. So I've nitpicked a little bit at the earlier scene, but overall I enjoyed that one. Like the dumb uh, troops on the planet and delaying Cassian. At least that was funny. I mean, I laughed when they started playing rock paper scissors, all that kind of stuff. Uh, this rave scene, I don't know if it was too close to the Matrix rave scenes in my brain, which I detested. Like that was kind of like
yeah, like why are we doing this? Yeah, right.
I, so I have a Matrix theory of there's only one Matrix movie and the other two never existed. I do that for other movies like Pirates of the Caribbean and stuff like that. But
And
um,
most Star Wars sequels. Anyway, well,
you know what? Well, we could do a whole show on how I misremember the prequels. So yeah, and parts of the sequels. So anyway, because my headcanon's pretty good. But yeah, this just was not my favorite scene. This is the one part of the show where I was like, checking my phone or whatever. Like I was done. It could just go on to the next thing, and I was perfectly content. I didn't need to see any more of it.
yep. And then we'll see what happens next time because yeah, things are gonna change. Yeah. And then our final plot, at least so far, Cassian's friends from the old hometown, Bix, Will, and Brasso, and my favorite little cute droid, B2EMO. I love him.
Yeah, they need to have him at the droid shop at Disney. 'Cause I would totally build one of those.
Yeah, I mean, I think even I read somewhere that several of the actors who got to work around that like loved him because it was a real workable droid. It wasn't like CGI like maybe BB. Well, BB-8 was kind of real too, but this is like the guy doing the voice was there. He's fully mobile and they're doing the little thing and everybody loved it. So I love it. It's cool. They got to interact with them for real time. But they're all off on this agricultural world again, monolithic thing that happens in Star Wars, waiting for him to get back, and Cassian to get back from his tie heist. I guess this planet's got lots of rules and regulations, but they're illegally, undocumented, so to speak, doing mechanical odd jobs and trying to stay under the radar. Which, of course, nothing goes to plan, and you see this Imperial-looking ship or some kind of ship, but what else could it be, right? Arriving to do some kind of census that they do every so often, or like an audit that some people are calling it. And they, I guess, start to feel the pressure, so they're going to get moved around to other places that they've already been to avoid the Imperials finding out that they shouldn't be there and get arrested or tortured or killed or all the other fun things that happen. But of course, being plot, things don't quite work out the way they wanted to.
So my take on this is kind of interesting because you could look at these scenes from a couple different angles of what they're trying to do. But my big feeling from this is a great way of world building, right? That they're making us further detest the Empire, which yeah, okay, the even in the original, A New Hope intro, right there, the visualization of stormtroopers as supposed to be these scary symbolic things of the Empire and make your associations there where you want throughout the time. But in the recent Star Wars media, they've made a big push to kind of, I think, shift that dislike, not just from uh, the the large focus, to um, like in Bad Batch and in this show and whatever, we're seeing how terrible the Empire was for the everyday people, right? You know, most of the movies and the big shows have been about like the big heroes, like how's the Empire affecting Luke and how's the Empire affecting Leia and Han and all these things, but Bad Batch and this show us the everyday people and just how the Empire is making life miserable for everybody. And no wonder we get rebellions, right?
Yeah, because they don't really talk about it. They mention it vaguely in like the first couple Star Wars movies. That, oh, it's they're whatever they are. It's just a bad regime, but it's not like okay, well, obviously until they blow up a whole planet. Okay, fine. Okay, yeah, they're really bad. They blew up a whole planet, but
Fear of this battle station.
yeah,
But
but like the minor details, like the day to day, like the average Joe, like how are they dealing with the rebellion, the Empire, right? So yeah, there is like a flip, or not, just more of an exposition on here's why there's a rebellion. It's not just because they just wanted to. It's it's because they're doing some bad things to everybody, not just certain kinds of people. It's just they're dominating and controlling everything.
yeah, it's a boiling kettle, right? I mean, eventually the pressure's got to release. That the rebellion is the pressure release valve of the result.
Yeah, and then we have a really creepy scene with that Imperial lieutenant who starts to come on to Bix, who's like, "Yeah, my husband, is away. Oh, really? I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And she rebuffs him, which I knew, of course, later he was going to show back up again and take it one step further. And sure enough, as they're getting ready to leave, he shows up, and now he knows that she's not here legally, tries to rape her, and thankfully, and Star Wars probably will never get this dark, but thankfully he gets what he deserves, and she seemingly like just smacks him across the head a couple times. He staggers out and falls over, and the guy says he's dead. So good. Don't go down that dark rabbit hole there. It's Star Wars. It's still family kind of friendly stuff. Just
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Totally deserved. And my only comment there was he got more hammered than Mon Mothma did at the party. So
Dun, dun, yeah. So of course while all that's going on, the other two people in this little party have their own problems, except for B2, who's just having a good time with the kids chasing him around. He's having fun, which is good because he's too happy-go-lucky to be caught in some serious stuff. So, but Will just had to say goodbye to his new girlfriend and is far away from the ship when the Imperials show up. And of course, then Brasso has to leave Bix all by herself to go find Will, which of course leads to what we just talked about. And then of course now Brasso runs up getting caught. Will can't get his speeder because that's where the stormtroopers are, so he has to run back to Bix, which takes forever. And then I guess catches the end of the festivities there and starts to shoot the one guy that's left. And of course now that guy's radioing in like I'm under attack, whatever. And then I thought okay, cool. So now he's drawn like half the Imperials away from Brasso to go off to help the other guy. So I'm like okay, this is great. He's gonna get away. I figured Cassian is we show him kind of arriving on the above the planet. Like okay, good. He's gonna swoop in. He's gonna save the day. But well, anyway, up until here though, what were you thinking? Were you thinking the same kind of thing, or
definitely, once you kind of get Cassian in system, I can't talk. Once you get Cassian in system, you just keep expecting any minute that the characters are in trouble, that he's going to swoop in and you know right the wrongs, right? Oh, that's how they're going to get out of this. Cassian's here. We've got this cool new ship. He's had a little bit of time now to figure out how to fly it. We're probably in pretty good shape. He knows how the weapon systems work. So, yeah, boom, everything's gonna be good. But I think as you mentioned a little bit earlier in our recap, he was held up just long enough.
yeah? Because then we don't see it, but then later you realize that Brasso did get killed when he was trying to escape on the speeder. So yeah, to your point, he was just that missed it by that much, right? So, but of course, he gets to show off his new flying and shooting skills with the new Tie Fighter and guns down all the Imperials. Have a little sad scene with him trying to like wake Brasso up. It's like no, he's dead. Oh well, then he gets Will and Bix in the tie, and they realize he's dead, and they're all. It's a very sad cockpit as the tie leaves off there, which kind of makes me wonder a couple of things, which hopefully we'll get to start of next episode. But are they going to get B2 or are they just going to leave him there? Which I mean, I guess he's being cared for by that woman who runs that whatever general store that the troopers are at. So I guess he's in a good place if they don't come back and get him. But I guess more importantly, we've seen Will be impulsive a lot in these last season and this season. That hasn't worked out for him pretty well. Like last season, he started the riot by throwing that bomb on all the troopers that started that riot and all the gunfire on Ferrex. or at least made it worse. Maybe it was going to happen at some point, but he like escalated it to like the 10th degree, right? And now here he had to go leave his friends and go like halfway across the field to say goodbye to his new girlfriend, which probably, if he thinks about it, that's probably what caused Brasso to get killed, right? So is he going to learn from this or not? I'm curious to see where this goes.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I hadn't really picked up on that, but I think you're right that there's definitely a through line there, at least some character consistency. I don't know. I, I I think this is one of the areas the show does a really good job of keeping me guessing. I don't know if that's something that will be a plot point or if it's just a character trait that they're just yep, that's Will. He's impulsive. He's always going to kind of wait while he's a good guy. He's going to do something stupid and cause us problems, and that's just the way it is. Or if that's leading somewhere that they're going to actually use. Um, this show's really good at making you think about those little things of like I'm not really sure which way they're coming at it. Kind of like to your point, I hated that we had to have Brasso die, right? But one of the another thing that this show's kind of done, kind of similarly, is and this carries over from last season is I struggle to know, is this person important? Like, are they going to be a main character that's going to be consistently throughout it, or are we never going to see them again? Right? Some of the characters from the original heist, the sheep heist, as I call it, from the first season. We've got Cinta and Mon Mothma's sister, who I can never remember her name.
Yeah, me either.
But they wound up being characters they keep showing us. Now, she hasn't, especially the sister, she hasn't done anything to make you think, oh, you need her as a main character, but they keep bringing her back. So is she important or is she not? Whereas some of the characters, you're like, oh, that's going to be a character that's going to have a big part, like the Manifesto kid from season 1. Nope, we killed him off real quick. So I never know which characters to try to get attached to and pay attention to, and which ones are like peripherally, yeah, this guy's important. No, not really, he's dead. Or you just never see him again. That's my long-winded way of saying I don't know about Will, but it also makes it hard for us to kind of figure out which characters to watch. We do know that where Cassian is at the beginning of Rogue One, right? And we never see the rest of these characters, so it makes it really hard to predict. Are they going to make it out alive? Are they dead by the time we hit Rogue One, which is really coming up quick, or is it they're just went their separate ways and we don't need to worry about them, or we may pick them up in a different show or a different media or whatever. It's just such an unknown, which is what's making it kind of hard to follow and interesting at the same time. I have to try to really pay attention.
Yeah, no, I agree because half the time you're like, who's this person? Okay, I saw him last time. Okay, so they're still here. Okay, usually that's a good thing. But yeah, to your point, yeah, anybody could drop dead at any minute. Except
Right, we went an entire
it,
season with Brasso, and then 3 episodes in, he's a main character. Nope, no, he's not. He's gone. We got 9 more episodes to go. So,
yeah, okay. So all we have is Mon Mothma because she's in everything up through the movies. We got Cassian and Krennic, who
mhm.
buys it and wrote later. But yeah, so other than those three, it's like everybody else is up for game. I mean, it's fair game. It's like, maybe they'll be around, maybe they won't. It's almost like their version of Game of Thrones, right? We have 10,000 characters, and at some point we're gonna start knocking them off, and whether you're invested in them or not, we'll see, right?
Yep.
So yeah, anything else? That's kind of the end of the main plot lines here. Anything else to talk about that we didn't, or anything you want to go back into that we did talk about? If not, I'm looking forward to more political intrigue and spy stuff and action that we've come to expect from Andor. And like to your point, yeah, Rogue One's. I think we're like what they say it was like 5 years before the Battle of Yavin. So I forget when. And the Rogue One took place right up until that point. So yeah, they're running out of time. So will this have a bunch of time jumps and kind of end near where Rogue One starts up? Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would be surprised if they don't. I, I'm not a writer, but if I ended this show, I'd end it with Cassian heading to the meet with that spy on that planet, right? At the beginning of Rogue One, and just kind of drop it right in. Kind of like what they did with Rogue One, where they dropped it right into A New Hope. It'd be kind of cool if this show just kind of drops you right into the show, but or the movie, yeah, Rogue One movie. But yeah, overall, I don't think I have anything else to add. I really enjoyed it. This is one of my favorites of the new shows. And I always look forward to new Star Wars shows of any kind. with a couple exceptions, they've always delivered. We've beaten those exceptions into the ground, and buried them and threw them in a back to tank and Sarlacc pits and all that kind of stuff. But this one, I think, is consistently delivered. I stay confused half the time, but that's okay. That's what I'm here for. So yeah, ready
Yeah,
for the next batch.
yeah. It's a fun confusion, and we're along for the ride. So yeah, so next time, yeah, the aforementioned fire hose of our release schedule continues with episodes 4 through 6, which will bring us to the halfway point, and hopefully we'll have even more thoughts on, yeah, are they going towards Rogue One or not? Like, are they going to jump ahead? Like, is each chapter like a year or something? Like, are they going to jump that way? They'll jump it right when the Battle of Yavin happens, which we're right before then. When, like you said, when Star Wars at the time unnumbered uh, was released. So we'll see.
I was wondering if you were to call that out.
Yeah. Well, apparently somewhere, I don't know if it's in Britain or somewhere, they're showing the original cut of Star Wars,
That's
like the one
amazing.
they showed in the theaters before Lucas kind of started tinkering with stuff. That would be cool to see again, the way it was originally intended. Well, the way we originally saw, right? However you look at it, but
Yeah, it's intended it solves a debate, but yeah,
hand shot first. Anyway,
oh, agreed.
all right. So that is your homework for next time. The next chapter, chapter 2 of season 2 of Andor, and we'll see you then. Goodbye.
Goodbye.